girls. The twins are 11 months old, and I have a 2-year-old, and so you can imagine I'm one of those that it's like, sometimes I do squeeze the food, but we're really working on blending the food, and I just say I'm so inspired, we're going to go throw out all those packaged things and start blending some more. So I chose the topic of positive discipline. And have you ever heard the phrase that worrying is praying for what you don't want? Just give me a little nod if you've heard that. Worrying is praying for what you don't want. It's a powerful thing to think about. So I like to think of, if worrying is praying for what you don't want, positive discipline is training yourself to pray for what you do want. And I think prayer is what we're doing all day long. I don't think it's something that you do. I think it is something that you do, but I think the way that we think and the way that we speak to ourselves and the way that we envision our lives, that's a prayer, and that we're always doing that. And I didn't learn this from my 8 years in Catholic school, as you can imagine. I actually learned it from my dad. And it was one specific instance. I was 12 years old, and I was faced with a life-threatening bone marrow infection in my left arm. And I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and even after numerous tests and drugs and trying to figure out what was going on, my arm was still like 3 times its size and hot and infected. And the doctors were really worried that the infection was going to start moving to my heart. And so it's the night before the scheduled possible amputation. And everybody goes home, except for my dad. And it's late, it's dark, and he pulls up the chair next to me, and he takes my hand. He says, "Close your eyes." And so I close my eyes. And he says, "You have your personal little army. And they're here, and we're going to send them inside your arm to dig out the infection." And he said, "Can you see them? They're wearing their uniforms. Can you see them? Each one has their own little tools. Somebody has a shovel, somebody has a pick, somebody has a hose. They all have buckets. Now see them, they're marching. They're marching into your arm. Now one of them is digging and shoveling and putting the infection into the shovel. They're digging it out, putting it in the shovel, digging it out, putting it in the shovel. Now they're hosing it down and getting every little square, every little inch, cleaning it, putting all of it into the shovels and making sure it's so clean. Can you feel it? Can you see it? I'm like, yeah, I can. And he says, now they're closing it. They're putting it back together perfectly. They're putting it back together. Can you see it? Can you feel it? Yeah, I can. Now they're marching out, one by one. They're marching out with the buckets. They're marching out. The infection's gone. Can you see it? I'm like, yeah, I can see it. And then the next day, the operation was canceled. The infection was gone. I didn't remember that story for 15 years. And 15 years later, I was really struggling, and I was asking myself, how do I create positive, lasting change in my life? Particularly, how do I stop binging and purging? And how do I stop doing negative habits that are in the way of me fulfilling what I really want, to live a healthy and happy lifestyle? Why am I so depressed? Why can't I get myself to do what I say I want to do? What is it? And I was fierce about asking this question. I wanted to know, how do I get myself to make positive, lasting change? And I was taking a yoga class, and I was with my teacher. Do you know what downward facing dog is? Nod your head if you know what downward, yeah, most of you. So I'm in downward facing dog, and my teacher keeps coming up to adjust my shoulder. Depress your shoulder, retract your shoulder blade. I'm like, okay, I'm an athletic person. I've been training for 20 years already. I know how to depress my shoulder blade and retract my shoulder blade. I know how to do this. But yet he keeps coming up to me over and over. Pull your shoulder back, drop your shoulder. It's like he's on me. Finally, I just go, ah. And in my head, I shout to myself, why can't I do this? And it's like I got shouted right back at. And in that moment, the whole memory of being 12 with the army and the infection and my dad and the story, all of that, that memory came so loud, flooding back to me. I hadn't remembered it until that time. And instinctively I went, oh, my left arm is shorter. Can you see? I had never measured my arms before. I realized 15 years later that the humerus never grew after the infection. So if you can imagine what downward facing dog is, you have your hands on the floor, right? So you have your hands on the floor, how do my shoulders look? It's impossible to retract the shoulder blade. It's impossible. So you could see my frustration. I can do much more challenging things than that. And when it came back to me, I thought, no wonder I can't do this pose. No wonder. I even got excited about it. I'm like, I can't do the pose because I had an infection. I'm going to tell my teacher, and he's like, it's not likely that your arm is shorter that much. He said, unless you had an injury. I said, I did have an injury. I was like so happy. I figured it out. Back off. I did have an injury. And so then I got, but that wasn't the only answer I got. I did get the answer of why I couldn't do the pose, but I got a more important answer. What I learned being in the hospital with my dad that night was that what he taught me was that instead of just worrying, and him sitting there worrying, and my parents pacing and worrying, and me being afraid, I didn't know what was happening the next day, but I knew I was sick. He taught me something very valuable, to actually participate in the healing. He actually taught me the importance of being a participant in the healing process, envisioning what I wanted to happen, envisioning what would be the best case scenario, versus what we normally do as human beings. We rehearse and rehearse the worst case scenario. We envision it, we play it in our mind. We think in some weird way it's going to prepare us. Let's just imagine the worst. And we get very addicted to fear and doubt and worry. So what I learned in that moment about how could that help me create long-term positive change in my life was that I realized, oh, it's really about how I'm thinking. It's really about how I'm thinking. And I thought, well, I believe in the power of my thoughts. I believe that what I think I am, I become. I believe that when I ask, it is given. I believe that when I pray believing, it's done. I believe those things. And I was kind of like, that's nothing new. And then I got it. I believed it, but I wasn't living it. Two very different things. Two very different things. So I'm going to ask you, how many of you believe that what you think matters? How many of you believe that what you think you become? That when you think negative thoughts, it negatively impacts your life? Just give me a nod of the head. I think you all do, and you're just not raising your hand. But I think it's true. I think we know that, at least to some extent. So I'm going to ask you another couple of questions. Be honest. How many of you today worried? How many of you today said anything or any version like, I'm tired, I'm sick, I'm fat, I'm broke? You did, didn't you? I'll find one. I'll find one. Oh, you're pretty happy there. You look pretty good. The difference between believing and knowing is huge. When you know, like you know, that when you touch a flame, you will be burned. When you know, like you know, if I push this, if I drop it, It's going down, it's not going up. When you know the consequence of your negative thinking, like you know that if I drop this goes down, you will then know how powerful you really are. You'll then know how blessed you really are. But it's not easy. And so what I did after I came to this realization was I decided I was going to go on a mission to not just believe these things, but to live them. I actually created a practice called intenSati. And intenSati was designed first and foremost for me to be able to train myself to interrupt my negative thinking, literally discipline myself. Literally discipline. I do not allow myself to think those thoughts. To interact with my mind as the boss of my mind versus the slave of my mind. So what I did, I created a workout. I've been in the fitness field for 20 years, and I combined all the different things that I knew and created a workout that when you're actually working out, you literally speak to yourself, sending yourselves new messages, changing the way that you interact with yourself during challenging situations, so that you can interrupt your old way of interacting with yourself, interrupt your old perception of who you are by experience. Because the difference between believing and knowing is experience. So until you've experienced doing that over and over, interrupting yourself, saying, no, I don't get to worry. Let me focus on what I really want to happen. No, it's telling myself I'm fat, telling myself I'm weak, telling myself I'm broke is, as I call it, illegal. It is not allowed. But it's still not simple. So that's why for me the word discipline is very important, because it takes repetition. It takes a fierce determination. It takes over and over and over again training yourself to be that devoted, because I do believe, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that my thoughts become things. That what I think about, I become. That when I pray believing, it is done. But I'm not a master at it yet. But I am a lot better. I have stopped binging and purging. I have stopped doing the unhealthy things that I was doing before. I am happier. I'm not depressed anymore. I have a business that's booming. I am an author. I am a wife of 3 kids. I'm married to the love of my life. I have a beautiful home. And I have big dreams. And in order for me to achieve those big dreams, I have to be able to master my mind so that I know how powerful I am. And that I can be somebody who, I call it, thinks like God thinks. So I'm going to leave you with a little exercise. And it's a small little version of what I do in my practice called intenSati. Inten comes from the word intention, and Sati means mindfulness. And it's a practice of being mindful, keeping your attention on what you want versus keeping your attention on what you don't want. 2 very different life journeys. So are you willing to play?
Yes.
Give me a yes. Yes. Okay, so all you have to do, let's have you stand up. Woo! No negative thinking. No complaining about standing up. Okay, stand up tall, proud, like you are so excited to be here. Got it? Everybody go like this, just make a muscle. This is not really what we do in class, we do much more movement. Come and stand right here. All I want you to do is repeat after me, okay? And I want you to repeat it loud as if you're sending yourself a message that this is your new perception of yourself. Nod your head if you're willing. Okay, you gotta keep your face bright and happy. I am powerful beyond measure.
I'm powerful beyond measure.
I am stronger than I seem.
I am stronger than I seem.
I am braver than I think.
I am braver than I think.
And I am blessed with all I need.
And I am blessed with all
One
I
more
need.
time. I am powerful beyond measure.
I am powerful beyond measure.
I am stronger than I seem.
I am stronger than I seem.
I am braver than I think.
I am braver than I think.
And I am blessed with all I need.
And I am blessed with all I need.
Yes, you are. Thank you. You can sit down. So I did bring for you guys tonight something. I call them a miracle mantra bracelet. Because a miracle is a shift in perception. And I define it. Of Course in Miracles defines a miracle as a shift from fear to love. I just change it a little bit. And I just say it's a shift from seeing yourself as powerless to powerful. And so this one that I brought you tonight says, I love my life. And so it's just devoting yourself to really not just talk about loving your life in the future, but knowing that love is an action. And it's something that when you do it every day and you devote yourself to doing it every day, your life turns out to be pretty magnificent. And so if you want to take a bracelet home tonight, I have this.